Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to go over how to create a type of synth like the synth in Particle Arts by Virtual Self, Porter Robinson's other project. So I'm going to go over this kind of main synth in this intro section that also comes in the drop section. So here's what his sounds like. Okay, and here is where I got to. Okay, so I guess there are three patches here, three main patches. So I will go over each of them individually. So I'll start with the main synth. And if you'd like to know the notes for this section, they are right here. And the second part of the section, the notes are like this. So yes, I will go over how I made this. I will take off all of the processing that I have, and we can just go one by one with everything. Okay, so I started off with a saw wave, and here's what that sounds like. Okay, so I knew that this patch needed to have more voices, so I pushed it up to 9 voices and the detune at 0.10, and here's what that sounds like. And that didn't really have the kind of sharp, bright quality that I wanted, so I threw on this other oscillator with this wicked waveform from Massive, and 5 voices detune at 0.05. Kind of just gives it this brighter character in the very high end. This is in the digital hybrid category, and a lot of these over here are good for high frequency stuff. And then in the original, there is this kind of glide between notes. So I threw on this portamento, turn it on always. It's at 18 milliseconds right now. And then I used this curve over here, pushed it up into this kind of shape. So the glide between notes happens a little bit quicker. And I just played that out to kind of gauge the right strength and forward movement to kind of make the patch feel like it's moving forward very strongly. One of the things that I guess I'd want to talk about in this video is this new concept that I've been really trying to work on in practice. I like to call it emotional hearing versus sonic hearing. And pretty much like my entire life, I've been focused on sonic hearing because I just always wanted a perfect mix. But the reason a lot of my music just kind of sounds a little soulless and there's not a lot of emotion or personality in it is because I've been so focused on the sonics and I haven't been focused on the emotional quality of the sound. So with this emotional hearing versus sonic hearing, I'm deliberately changing my awareness towards listening to the sound and its emotional quality. So I'm like closing my eyes, I'm listening to the patch, and I'm trying to feel the emotion. So this synth in particular, it sounded like it was driving forward. It sounded like it was very triumphant, like almost like you're going to war or something. So that's how I kind of felt out where this curve needed to be, and a lot of other parameters that I will talk about. So again, here's what that sounds like. Okay, and then I knew this had to be distorted because it's a very distorted lead sound. So I used the sine fold and threw that on, drive 14%, mix 68%. Here's what that sounds like now. Okay, and then I threw on a compressor to kind of control it, but also emphasize the attacks in a certain way to, again, make sure it's driving forward in the proper emotional quality and to make sure it has the right like personality. So throwing that on, it just kind of gives it a more distinctive quality. And the attack around 10 milliseconds again, that's where I've been feeling it. Release around 30, ratio 5. I'm just trying to get like a little bit of compression on that, so it emphasizes the attacks a little bit. And then reverb is very important in this section and this patch and this song. So I threw on this reverb, again, going back to the emotional hearing. It sounded like this sound was in like a cavern. And like, to me, it just sounded like the reverb was kind of bouncing off the walls and surrounding this patch and kind of engulfing it. So this first reverb is kind of to give it space and to make it kind of feel sunk into some sort of like cavern or something. Yes, so that is the main patch. This little LFO here, I threw that on the coarse pitch of this, and I'm using a macro to control that. And the macro is only coming in this one note. It just felt like it needed a little bit more of a pitch bend going up into it. So if I take that off, it's super subtle, like almost barely noticeable, but for some reason that helped it drive along in that section. So yes, I believe that's everything for that sound in the synth. And then I threw this utility on and turned the width down so that reverb and the sound would feel more in the center, so kind of farther away. So here's what that sounds like with it off. I think for synth sounds that you want to sound very far away, it's important to kind of put them in the center as well. I found if they're very heavily drenched with reverb, if it's super wide with reverb, that can work sometimes, but for this specific quality, it sounded like the sound was very far away, like deep in that cavern again. Okay, and then I just threw this EQ on to kind of take some of the lows out in this very high frequency range. And then I use this analog EQ to boost the around 1K. It's very subtle. I think I'm only doing around 2 dB. And then this Pro Q3 is doing this filtering at the very end. So if I pull up like what's going on, if I go back to the original, trying to recreate that, I didn't quite get the proper filtering sound to it. I think he's doing something else there as well, but I couldn't quite recreate it perfectly. And then I threw on some delay here for some more like bouncing around that cavern. Just kind of making it bounce off, very short delay. Feedback's not extending out very long. And yes, that is that patch. And then I threw it into this reverb send, which has a little bit more delay. And then this reverb that I set to kind of very emphasize that huge cavern sound. Again, trying to engulf the sound in there, using that kind of emotional hearing to hear that out. And then I threw on this decapitator to saturate the reverb to kind of give it a more shimmery quality and also fatten it up a bit and just give it more character. And then I tried to do a little bit more emphasis on the highs, but it didn't really work out. And then just this EQ to kind of shape the reverb in the proper way. And I also compressed it a bit to kind of smush the reverb together, also make it feel a little farther away. It's not doing quite so much. And then I use this compressor to sidechain the reverb to the sound itself. And that's just kind of giving the synth its own space so the reverb isn't getting in the way of it. So yeah, that is the main patch. Then I layered this little hit, this B note. It sounded like there was an extra note there that kind of rung out in his version. I will play that. It's like that. Boo. So I tried to recreate that, just give it a little bit more emphasis. Just that little note there. It's the same patch, just some more reverb, and I kind of extended the note out a little bit. Okay, and then this other little patch that comes in at the very end is just the same patch, but took off this second oscillator. And I took the voices completely down to 1. And here's what that sounds like. So with all 3 of those together, let's hear what that sounds like. Yeah, so kind of getting there with the entire little arrangement there. The second patch to show you is this bass patch that just kind of complements the main synth. And the notes for these are right here. These are the bass notes that the bass patch is following as well. And these are just the same notes, just a higher octave up. So this patch, similar to the other one, I guess I will take off the processing again. Yes, so here's what it sounds like with just the saw wave. Turn off that reverb as well. So I use this envelope shape just to kind of give the notes their own shape. And then I threw that up to a certain amount of voices. I forget where it was actually. Something like that. And then I use this Chrome wavetable to provide some high end again with 6 voices, detune at 0.07. Detune for this was 0.16. And then I used distortion, the rectify on this one. The other one was sine. And I don't know if I'm even using this EQ. And then I use the compressor again to emphasize the attacks. And then reverb again to give it its own space, like the main patch, and make it sound kind of far off in that cavern. And then again, I threw a utility and turned the width down. All right, and then I threw an EQ on to shape it a bit more. Seemed like it needed some push in that 600 range, and then threw this delay on to make the notes kind of thrown and bouncing around. And I'm throwing this into that same reverb send. So all of those together. Okay, so the last patch is this bass patch. And it's just following that eighth note pattern. And this one, going back to the emotional hearing, it sounded like in his version that this was some sort of foundation, like, I don't know, like tribal drummers, like getting ready for war or something. And it had this driving forward, like powerful feel to it. So that's what I tried to emulate. So I used a saw wave, 7 voices, detune at 0.11. And then I did rectify again on it. And I threw this filter on it to filter it down, cut off around 238. So without that filter, and again, I'm using a compressor to control those attacks and give the notes some beef, like compressing them down together and helping them drive forward was very important for the sound. Yes, so that, and then the last thing was just this clap. I just tried to find a clap that matched what he had. Yeah, and there's just that little like 16th note roll there, and then this kind of extra note in there as well. So yes, if all of those are playing together, we get the final result. Yes, so I hope that helped. Just refer back to the timestamps if you want to clarify anything. And I think I'm really gonna make a video about the emotional hearing versus sonic hearing, because I think personally that's gonna be one of the biggest things for me in my future, trying to make better music. That's something I just have not paid attention to really, and it's so crucial. And I think that's going to be one of the distinguishing factors that will allow me to create music that's actually meaningful and emotional, and allowing me to create music that will actually be picked up by labels and be given to people who want to hear it. So I will talk about that more. I think it's important for you guys to try to implement as well. It's a skill you can learn, and eventually it will become second nature, and you'll be able to hear both at once, I think. So yes, this was a fun patch to make. If you liked it, please give a subscribe and a like, and I'm going to be coming back with some more sound design things very soon. So thanks for watching.